Hello, and
Hi.
hello, welcome to Wednesday Wino. I'm Rebecca from Kangaroo Ridge Retreat.
And I'm Hannah from What's River Brewing.
It's hump day again, and we're celebrating all things Yarra Valley wines, beers, and delicious. And it's has been such a beautiful day today, so why shouldn't we celebrate it and do it alone? So this is week 6 of our Wednesday winos, and previously we had Damien Morgan from Pimpernel, and Scott from Mileto, Scott from Soma, and Emma from Madden's Rise. And, it's been a great time. We've had some great tastings. We've been having a lot of fun. So, yeah, we're continuing it. So it's week 6.
So this week we've got an amazing guest. Really excited to introduce Chris from Sailor's Grave Brewing in Gippsland. We did I'll talk about that later. So we'll welcome Chris.
I'll bring him up.
Maybe.
Yep, you're online. Oh, all right, cool.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, guys.
So in terms of engagement, we've got people who are online from the Kangaroo Ridge Retreat Facebook page. If they've got any questions or anything like that, they can just add a comment in the comment section. We'll ask Chris from Sailor's Grave Brewing, or we'll bring it all up. So just to let everybody know a little bit like that. And I just want a big shout out to Scott. Scott's online there from Mileto to say hi. Hi, Scott. But back to the show, I guess. Hi, Chris. Welcome to Wednesday Winos. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and Sailor's Grave?
Yep, sure. So Sailor's Grave is a little brewery in Orbost, which is in Far East Gippsland, about 4.5 hours east of Melbourne, in the middle of nowhere, in a lot of forest close to the coast. It's me and Gab and a few other people, and we live just down the road where we are now on the farm, about 20 k's further east on the coast near Marlow, kind of, and close to Cape Conran. We've been going for about nearly 4 years now, which seems amazing. It doesn't seem that long that we've been around. Loving it. Despite all of this, still loving it.
And you've been through quite a lot with the bushfires and now COVID, so I'm so impressed. You've got a great smile on your face still.
Yeah. It's an irrational smile, but I'm feeling it.
Yeah, it's emotional.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're drinking tonight.
Yep.
So we're going to taste 2 beers. The Horse to Water, which was a collaboration with Chris, Sailor's Grave, and What's River Brewing. And Chris came over to Healesville to brew it with us. And Chris, we're going to start with one of your, is it a standard range or is it a special batch, this one?
It's a special, yeah. It's part of a series, but definitely a special. Yep.
So it's Sake Kazu and Satsuma Plum.
That's right. Biru Sake Casso.
Thank you. I was trying to avoid saying it altogether.
I was just leaving the space so you could have a go.
Forced me into having a go. So I think Scott's a little sad we didn't promote the Sake Kasu because he won't be able to taste it with us. We picked it up at Point of Difference in Mitcham. If anyone's looking for some of your beers, they had this one. So tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. So this is the second in this Sake Kasu series that we've done. It's with the Fermentary, who are a great bunch of guys doing amazing things across a whole lot of different types of fermentation. And they introduced us to an amazing sake producer from the outskirts of Tokyo. He's on the sort of farmland on the outskirts of Tokyo, and he's doing 100% wild ferment sake, brown rice sake. He's even sort of wild catching his own aspergillus molds for making the koji. Really interesting. No one really like him even in Japan. And we met him at an event with the Fermentary, and we also went over to Tokyo and visited him on his at his brewery out there. Crazy stuff, lots of spritzy, hazy, funky sakes. And so we use his and a mixture of other, also from Japan, sake kasu. Sake kasu is when they make sake right at the end before they package it, they press all the solids out of the liquid. The liquid gets packaged as sake, and the solids are sort of this cake, which it smells amazing. It smells umami. It's like smelling Parmigiano Reggiano. It's like intense.
So savoury smell.
So savoury, yeah. And we use that instead of beer yeast. We use that to ferment the beer on 100%, and it's full of lots of lactobacillus, a mixture of yeast, some wild, some conventional, and also the remnants of the koji, that kind of mold they use to break down sugars for sake. And it will do the same in beer. It sort of creates an enzyme that breaks down the sugars and dries out the beer. So it takes a long time to produce. The first one we did with persimmon, and this one we've done with satsuma plums from my wife Gab's sister's farm and another neighbouring farm. So super sour.
Yeah.
Delicious. I love it.
It's like the warhead of beer. Like,
it's great. So good.
really good.
And it's kind of a beer I love to make and drink is this kind of relatively simple style. It's not a kettle soured beer, so it's not that simple. It's left on bacteria in a tank, but probably for about 8 weeks. So you still get a very clean beer, very subtle, very drinkable if you like sour beer.
It's great.
Not as complex as a barrel fermented beer. There's no Brettanomyces in it, but still just a nice level of complexity and sort of a weird kind of, even though this beer is super dry, the plums and the fullness from the umami qualities give it a kind of sweet edge, even though it's sour as well. But yeah.
We have a question from Scott. He asks, what are the pH changes in, would you?
Yep. So it relatively quickly drops in the tank down to about 3.4 and ends up, it varies, but it ends up about 3 to 3.1, so pretty sour.
It's great. So nice. So
Wow. Yeah, it's really.
you said fermentation was 8 weeks, roughly.
Yes, and it's mainly, most of the fermentation is done within a bit slower than normal. It takes a while for that cake. You have to sort of coax it back to life to kick off because it's been stressed and it's been in high alcohol environment. But because of that enzyme, it will continue to that enzyme will continue to tick away, breaking down sugars that otherwise wouldn't break down in the beer, and then it will be fermented by the yeast from then on. So that's why it takes so long. We did in the first batch think it had finished, and the persimmon won, and it did continue to ferment. It all get to break down and ferment further in the can. So you've got to give it all. Yeah.
How did the cans cope with a little bit of fermentation?
All right, as long as you didn't drop them.
Well, this is excellent. I love sour beers, and this is a banger. I love it.
Yeah. Another question about this one is what temperature? From Scott again.
Warm. So we fermented again because the yeast was quite stressed and tired, and we wanted to coax as much of the character of the yeast out as possible. We fermented about between 24 and 25 degrees. About 24.5 degrees. So, and let it just rise up to that and capped it at that, and that's warm enough really to avoid too many you don't want to go too high or you'll get a few weird byproducts, but it still keeps very clean, but you get the most of the kasu character if you let it go warm.
Mm-hmm. I was watching your show with Crafty Pint yesterday, and you said something about a kettle versus a tank in the sour beer process of making it. Can you explain that to me? Because I was like, what? Kettle, tank, what? Okay.
Yep. I guess a kettle sour is the simplest way you can do it, where in the initial stages of the brewing, the hot side, I guess, you mash the grains, you run it off into the kettle, and you boil it. In the most simple kind of explanation, with a kettle sour, you would then you don't have to boil it, but after you've brought it up to a sanitary temperature, you bring it back down to a temperature around 40 degrees that's friendly to lactobacillus, a souring bacteria. You inoculate that in the kettle itself, hasn't gone into a fermenter. You let it go for about 18 hours. Then you bring it up to the boil, kills all the bacteria, goes into the tank, and you ferment cleanly as normal with whatever yeast you want. So it's all the bacteria's done its work in 18 hours and it's killed. A tank ferment, you add the bacteria after it gets into the tank, and it remains alive in the beer. But Lactobacillus is a pretty clean, simple, charactered bacteria, so you don't get an amazing depth of complexity, but you get more than you would if you did just a kettle sour, because it's allowed to evolve over a longer time.
Okay, got another question from Scott. He's asked, would this style of beer, you gotta hide your face, sorry Hannah, would this style of beer lend to having a seaweed addition? What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. We are happy, we do add seaweed to a lot of beers, and find it adds a real kind of taste of where we come from. Being on the ocean, you get a real, as long as you don't overdo it, seaweed adds that real kind of, ocean quality, to put it plainly, that sort of smell of the
sea.
Yeah, the sea. And we've always kind of run this and plan to run this using seasonal fruits, but we're definitely open. I'm just in my head now trying to imagine the flavors together. I'm sure it could work. I think if you did add seaweed, you would still want some balancing fruit character. Just because it's so sour and so dry, you need some illusion of sweetness or fruitiness to kind of balance it. But
I was going to say the balance on this beer is really nice with that sweetness on there. So agree. Yeah. Cool. Should we talk about the next beer? Is there anything else you want to say about that beer, Chris, before we move on?
No.
To the collaboration. So collaboration. I think Ben and Aaron had a great deal of fun brewing something together with you, Chris. It was really good to see you here in our hometown, away from the sea, here in the Yarra Valley.
Oh, it was a great day. It was a great day. Let me grab a second glass, actually. Hang on, sorry.
Open mine, actually. My bottle opener. I can't find
what you need is an excellent blade style opener.
Yeah. Oh, come on. I'm going to have to go get it. No.
I love this beer.
It is so good. So it is. Now I feel very underqualified talking about this. Ben's coming over to get some. So do you want to talk us a little bit through the brewing process, Chris, since you're the expert in the room?
I think Ben should chip in here.
Come over, Ben. Help me out.
Yes, hi, Ben.
I was very much the passive guy drinking beer in the background on the day, I must say. When we designed the beer together, but it was definitely, I think, the Watts River skills, especially the barrel management skills, which made this beer what it was. And it turned out exactly as we imagined it. We wanted different layers of fruit. So a fruity variety of Brettanomyces, Clausenii. Is that right, Ben? It was Clausenii, wasn't it?
Pretty sure it was, yeah. I was actually trying to double check that and find it. But I'm pretty sure it was. And so for people out there, there's different, it's a Brett strain and there's different Brett strains, but some of them throw out more pineapple flavour than others. So this one throws out more of those flavours, which complements the other pineapple flavours we got in there from other sources. So
including pineapple sage.
Yeah, pineapple sage, the pineapple puree, and galaxy hops, throws out a little bit of that sort of stuff too.
It was a pineapple.
Probably more passion fruity galaxy, but a little bit of pineapple too, I suppose.
Yeah. I really love how it's come out. You get this really complex depth of different fruity characters that really blend together. It's it really works. So and very, very clean job on the barrel work, guys. It's come across so complex but clean.
Yes. We find that generally our Bretts Like our Brett barrels come across pretty clean and complex. We have a little bit more strife with the sours, I suppose, the lacto and PDO sours and spontaneous. So they're a little bit more hit and miss, but the Brett ones are pretty reliable. So we've got pretty easy methods and stuff to do that. So all we do is, like, to prepare a barrel, we'll just fill it up with hot water and leave it, which helps. Hasn't had anything in it for a while. It helps kill anything that might be in there, and there might be stuff deep, but it also helps the barrel expand and make sure it fills the gaps. And then just inoculate. Occasionally we'll refill barrels. So if we really like a barrel, we won't go through that process. We'll just top it up. We know what's been in there has been good. So
Scott's got a comment. This has can taste papaya in it. But there's a question. It came back a while back, so I caught it when it came up, and it's from Simon. He said, "How did you guys get to know each other?"
We met very early. We met at the very first festival that Sailor's Grave participated in the Yarra Valley. What was the name of the festival?
It's Yarra Valley Beer Fest. No.
Was it the one in Lilydale or one in Yarra Glen?
Yeah, the one in Yarra, which was the first and the last of that festival.
No, they had a second one, but they had rain scheduled and it ruined them, I think.
No, that's right. Yeah.
We were. I remember that festival. We were kind of deer in the headlights. You know, we were so new, and we met you guys, and we're like, you had all this experience, and
we were still pretty young as Watts River at that point.
As Watts River, yep. But I mean, from before that.
Yeah. We're only a year, probably less than a year older than you as a brewery. So.
Well, you looked like you knew what you were doing more than we felt like we knew.
We can put on a good show.
Yeah. So that was a while ago. That was probably nearly 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I guess.
Probably 2016, maybe.
Yep.
How did you guys come up with the recipe? Like, did you just chat about it, or what's the process of the collaboration?
I think we went back and forth on emails a bit, didn't we?
Pretty much. Well, whenever we do a collaboration, we want it to be a collaboration. So we haven't done many collaborations. We do one every year with White Rabbit, because Aaron and I used to work with White Rabbit. And we always throw back a lot of back and forth emails, and it was similar with you. So we just but with the good thing is, with people we collaborate with, we get along with them, and it's pretty easy to come up with something we both like generally, which I thought we came across pretty fast this time, and we're on the same page.
Yeah, it wasn't a hard process. It was great. It was just sort of back and forth with ideas, and it came together pretty well.
Yeah.
Why pineapple?
Probably inspired originally by the Brett, was it, or was it?
Yeah, and Brett, the first two were the Brett and the pineapple sage that we had access to. I think you guys had access, or we had access. I can't even remember now.
I don't know.
I think they were the first two elements, and then we were just like, let's pile on the pineapple.
Yeah, so it was brewed quite a while ago, and spent a bit of time in barrel.
Yeah, it was brewed in February, and it's only been bottled in the last 6 weeks or so.
It was in bottle for a while too before we actually released it.
February last year.
12 years ago.
Yeah.
Right now.
So it's nearly a year old since we.
So have you left some Brett in the bottle? So it will continue to age well if you can keep it in cellar, which is not one of my strong suits.
No, this is our last bottle because I haven't been able to stop drinking it.
We'll get you some more.
And I get the papaya thing, and I think that's that kind of combination of Brett's slight funkiness with the fruitiness, because in papaya you definitely get that kind of musty, funky flavour. So I get where you're coming from with the papaya thing, Scott.
So for everyone out there, the reason why we put it in a champagne bottle is that it is still live, and there are still some carbohydrates in there. So it's a beer that you can age for a certain amount of time, maybe 2 to 3
2 to 3 years while the Brett's still happy.
While the Brett's still active, the Brett flavours will continue to develop. Some of the fruit, the fresh pineapple and that might drop off a bit and not ready, but it will definitely develop and change. Whether for some people it'll be better, some people worse, but depends what you like.
If you like Brett, it'll get better.
Personally, I love Brett, but I love it in balance with other flavors. I mean, that's my thing.
So I've got a question about the artwork.
Yes.
Tell us about the artwork, because this is the horse to water one, and
Yep.
I'll bring up the other one. They're both pretty impressive. Thanks, Ben. Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject and make you run away.
Both done by both those illustrations are done by Joe Lywood, who we've been working with since before we opened. He's UK-based illustrator. He did his kind of arts college masters in children's book illustration. Now he does everything. He's an illustrator, but you kind of see that whimsical, naive quality in a lot of his work. And he came and stayed with us out on the farm for a couple of weeks before we opened to get to know what we're all about. And we've worked with him ever since. Hopefully we'll work with him, continue forever. And yeah, he's great. He came again this summer during the fires. He was out on the farm and he got trapped here when the roads got shut. And so he had another good experience, Australian summer experience. But, we have a really good, because he knows us so well, really good communication, and we can send him a brief and he gets it straight away, what he wants and what we want, but he'll always still surprise us with how he interprets it. So it's really good. And we learned very early on at the start, we were like, oh, can you change this or you can change that? And it always seemed to get not as good as his original gesture. So now he gets it and we just run with, if it wasn't what we expected, we still run with it because it's great, whatever he comes up with. Yeah.
That's that trust. I think graphic designers, sometimes it's hard for them to take those changes, but it's a very talented one that you can let it lay.
Yeah.
and it's best.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
I mean, sorry, go on.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I was just going to say, I think there's that willingness, and Joe has that willingness to accept critique or change, then somehow you don't need to critique or change. It's kind of they're not. If the person is not defensive by nature, you have a much better rapport, and you can just trust them to do their thing, and they know who you are enough because they listen to you to do something that you'll like. That's my thoughts. Yeah.
I've got another question from Nare. Do you find Brett adds a dry phenolic finish feel to the beer?
Definitely dry. It's a slow and steady, but never give up kind of yeast. Phenolic, I find that varies again. Brett strain, different strains of Brett are more phenolic than others. And also time, as Ben was talking about before, perhaps some phenolic characters will come out in this later, but Clausenii is pretty on the softer end rather than the phenolic end, I find anyway. So, yeah. And, in some beers, those kind of phenolic things, again, if they're in balance with other flavours, it works. It can be really nasty phenolics, but it can be great if it's in balance.
When you're talking about phenolics, what do you actually mean?
Well, sort of spicy, clove-like, peppery kind of things. And, Brett in wine will produce different kinds of phenolics, which are more Band-Aidy, I guess. And you can get that Band-Aidy
okay. Yep.
thing in beer as well, which is not nice. I don't think there's ever a place for that kind of Band-Aidy smell. Yeah.
It's definitely really dry and it chews down those complex carbohydrates to make a beer drier. Maybe getting a bit of spiciness on the nose, but
it's still got, this beer's got mouthfeel and weight. So, it doesn't, even though it's super dry, it doesn't taste at all thin, which is the great thing, So you get drinkability from dryness, but you still get kind of mouthfeel.
So how is everyone in Gippsland? I can't really generalize that way. How is your community doing? With Gippsland.
Pretty good. I mean, there's a kind of cynical stoicism in Far East Gippsland at the best of times. So, pretty good. I mean, it's funny when you're out in a remote area anyway, and you're used to this lockdown situation hasn't really changed much for us. I mean, Gippsland's been through a rough summer, East Gippsland where we live, especially with the fires, and it's quite funny. That seems like a world away now after all of this. And personally, we were lucky. We came close to the time, but there's a lot of people out here who are really badly affected, and I feel more for them because the spotlight kind of shifted away from the fires onto this other stuff, and they're still, without tanks or without, houses or whatever, So for those people, but everybody's pushing through. I mean, I've been feeling, I was saying before to you guys, like our business is definitely reduced with half our customers shut. But at the same time, this period sort of for us, like March, April, May and June was going to be absolutely nuts. And it was actually such a relief when everything was cancelled. And, we can just spend time on the farm on weekends with our kids. And I feel, things are not perfect, but and a lot of people are doing it really hard and there's lives lost. It's not a great situation, but our personal situation, I feel really stress-free. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, I was going to say and I guess that's what we finish with often is trying to think about the bright side. So when we've all got our health, it's easy to sort of look at the bright side, but also feel for people that have been harder hit.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It was the same during the fires. There's always during these kind of things, you've got to check your survivor guilt and focus on the positives. If you're unaffected, you kind of have a responsibility to be positive and to, especially in remote communities, to concentrate on local resilience and local positives, really. There's nothing gained by wallowing. There's definitely something gained by having empathy for others who are suffering, though. Yeah.
Cool. Well, that got heavy awfully quickly.
Sorry.
No, beautiful, but heavy.
Questions as those discussions were coming through. One from George. Hello, George. I didn't get to say hello to you, but you came in. He said he wants to know whether Brett is a normal thing in beer making.
No, not in the post-industrial age. It isn't. It would have been a very normal thing in beer making before that. But clean, controlled fermentations are the norm in beer. So pick a strain or a couple of strains of yeast and exclude anything that makes packaging hard or quick processing of beer hard, like Brett does, and bacteria. So it's not, but it is more and more used because it produces more complex flavors. So it's not the norm, but it's definitely it's a strong niche.
It's got a long history and it's very delicious if you get into it, as I'm a Brett tragic. Orville, which is a long-standing Belgian Trappist ale. I think it's Trappist. I think it's dates, I don't know, 1700s or maybe even heaps longer. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, I don't know the numbers, but it's super old, like well over 100 years old. So there's that history there. But, yeah, in terms of what can be banged out quick and fast and cheap, it's not that.
That's right. Yeah, that's definitely a beer lover's beer. That one. Yeah, Orbost.
Well, I must say the two. Oh my goodness, what an evening we've had with the two beers. Wow, I'm like, this is
Makes for a great Wednesday.
Yeah, I know. It definitely pulls us over the hump of the week or the year, because every week is like a year at the moment. So everything changes so fast.
And lots of humps.
Do we have any further questions from our audience? If people who are watching on Facebook, we've got a comment from Scott. But if anybody has any further questions for Chris about Sailor's Grave Brewing, What's River Brewing, and the collaboration, let it know. Put it down in the comments now, because we're going to move on.
Well, we have gone over time, I think. So.
Yeah. So Scott said grain-derived sugars don't have the precursors that wine does for the bad characteristics in terms.
So that's why Brett tastes amazing in beer and is less fancied in wine.
Yes, well, very, very rarely.
Rarely fancied in wine.
And Scott wants to know how to make beer.
Don't answer that. He's a brewer.
It's a big question. It's actually very simple. It's not rocket science. So you just need malted grain, good water, really, and some hops, supposedly. And yeast, of course.
Yeast. There's T-shirts about it, I'm pretty sure. That should be all you need to know. The hops, water, yeast, malt T-shirt. Shall we do our should we do our one good thing to finish on?
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
So,
who wants to go first?
Chris, you go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
The best thing for me actually has just been a few sunny days this week and watching the kids bolt around the farm on their push bikes endlessly, and it just makes me feel really, really happy to be alive. So, yeah.
It's a good one. I discovered Bob Sinclair, a DJ, is doing 1 hour live Facebook DJs every day. He's up to day 50 because he's in France. He's French. And he does it in the French afternoon. But for us, it's 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Perfect time for a bit of doof or deep house. Great. Something.
I used to listen to one of his albums, Africanism, many years ago. But I used to listen to that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and he did an Africanism one 2 nights ago, I think. But they're all on his Facebook page, and he does it every night, 10 p.m. Get on board.
Right.
So, for my happy thing today, well, actually, it's been developing over this whole ISO period. We've got chickens, and they don't like to lay their eggs in the chicken hen, and basically there is a new ritual occurring every morning now with our dogs and the chooks, is to actually locate the eggs, because where they lay their eggs is all sometimes in the same spot, or it might be in another place where they made a nest. And there's a race between my dogs and us to try and find those eggs. Today we lost, but it's kind of like a fun ritual to have, is to go find the eggs. It's like Easter hunt.
Did the dogs eat the eggs if they win?
Yep.
Oh.
They definitely.
I think it's a good game.
They think it's a great game. So we're like, do we get eggs this week or not? So that's part of it.
Scott has reminded us of a very important question, which is, how do we get your beer, Chris?
Yes, where and how and everything.
Depends on where you live, but look at good independent bottle shops, definitely at the moment. And you can also buy our beer now. This has forced us into it. We were threatening to do this for a long time, but we now have a web store, so you can buy our beer on our web store, right? We'd have some mixed special release packs for delivery in Victoria. So,
awesome.
And you can get it through other states as well, but yeah.
Brilliant. And yeah, we've got a web store too. Same deal.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, so is it in Healesville or Williamstown?
What's that?
Do you know if any of the independent beer stores, this is putting you on the spot for Scott, whether you have any stores in Healesville or Williamstown that
I'm not
stock
sure.
you?
You guys would know about Healesville, but
Well, if you're going to get it anywhere in Healesville, it'd be Breweing, but I'm not. I think he has had some at some point. I'm not 100% sure if it's in stock at the moment.
What's B95? Is that a store, Scott?
Who knows, Scott? Both. Maybe it's just Melway's reference. Are we doing that?
Melway's reference.
I don't know. This has just aged me.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm unsure, but yeah.
Online. Go to their website.
But in terms of the horse to water, if you want to get the horse to water, we can get that. It's still available at Watts River Brewing, correct? Anywhere else?
Through our web shop or pick up from Healesville. And we're doing free deliveries in Greater Melbourne, Geelong, and Healesville region.
And what's happening coming up next week or this?
Do we know?
Or anything like that?
Pardon?
Is there anything happening live music-wise?
Yes, we're doing live music every Friday. We've got a really exciting band this Friday. They have been, what's it called? The Triple J Unearthed. They've been on Triple J Unearthed. Very excited. So that's 6 p.m. every Friday.
Excellent. So, all right. I guess we've gone way over time. I'm sorry. It's like 17 minutes of more than your time that we actually asked
Thanks,
for.
Chris. Much appreciated.
Oh, that's fine.
Thank you, Chris. I hope you had a great time.
Yep, I did.
Excellent. And yeah, so until then, everybody, for next week, what we're doing, keep an eye out. We're going to release what we're doing next week. It's in the works, and we'll be excited to announce who's going to be on Wednesday Winos next week. So keep an eye out. And until then, have a great evening. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. It's always messy at the end. Sorry. Work. It never, ever works.